put your hands together for Flashmob.
Hello. After an introduction like that, I feel like going home to Italy. So I've been thinking a lot on what to say today here. The starting point for me is having a white belt attitude. What does that mean? A lot of the problems producers have, maybe a lot of the problems that I've had through the years come from expectations. Expectations is probably one of the worst enemies of producers. Expectations come from the fact that we often forget that we are actually making music to make music as a medicine, as a tool to feel free, as a choice of life, as something that gives us the opportunity to take a different direction in life. So my choice came from a very stressful, as you can see, experience in life. At a certain point of my life, I changed what I was doing and how I was living, etc. And I decided to dedicate my whole life to music. This is what I've been doing ever since, as Pete quite clearly stated. So I was thinking of what to share today with you, and I thought I would actually leave you with something that is precious, at least that is precious for me. I have something in my pocket, I don't know what it is, it's the mic. Yeah, the most precious thing that I've learned throughout these, especially throughout these past 5 years since COVID, is how to be more efficient and how to be more aware that time is a essential and key factor in our lives and in making music and in being more efficient, without forgetting obviously the creative process. So there are obviously two different ways to start a project in music. One is identifying something we want to be within the industry, something we want to achieve within the industry, and setting an expectancy towards that goal. No? So I want to release on such a label because I want to be like such a guy. In my opinion, that is one of the worst and most dangerous things that you can do to yourself, because music is, as I said, a medicine. And music is
great.
And must be a way of healing.
Yeah.
Forgive me. I get very emotional when I talk about music because it's truly saved my life. And so, yeah.
Mate, where is you, dude?
Anyway, sorry. So, expectancy, we want to get rid of that. So the best way to get rid of that is to be organized. Be organized means to have a clear idea of how we want to be creative, how we want to express ourselves, and mostly we need to feel free to do that. And I feel that organization is one of the key points in doing so. So when studying and making music, and I'm asking myself if I'm actually going to turn this on anytime soon. But being organized and having a clear vision of what for us is a core sound is essential to know where we will go and what we want to do. So with Loopcloud and Splice, you can easily get lost. I mean, it happens to me every day. I scroll, and I keep looking for new sounds. Often I try to put myself in an awkward position. I try to put myself in a different genre from the one that I'm part of, to try and be more creative and try and find new sounds that will allow me to be original. Because let's not forget that there are billion people that have access to Splice and Loopcloud. So from an A&R point of view, you must always think that who's receiving your music will probably recognize. He's probably going to be a producer like me, and he's going to probably recognize the samples that you use. So it's very, very important to be organized and to approach these two incredible tools in the best way. So for me, I've been able to organize my my sample libraries both on Splice and Loopcloud, reselecting the sounds that I've accumulated in time. Obviously, myself, as probably many of you, we buy compulsively. So we keep thinking that the sample that we are actually selecting is the right one, then to find out that it's not. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because you can study and do all the courses that you want, and the 10,000 hours that you need to put into searching for your sound at the end of the day come down to your capacity, the capacity your brain has to select the correct sounds and put them together. In this case, selecting the correct samples and putting them together. If you select the wrong samples and you keep changing those samples, you're never going to get to where you want to get. And this is why it's so important for me to go into both Loopcloud and Splice. And very often, this is what I do. Very often I go here, go to folder, I have all my sounds in here. And this is not only for Splice, but also for Loopcloud. You can do the same thing. You go in preferences and you find where you've actually decided to store all your samples. And regularly I go through all these samples that I imported here today to show you, but usually I have them on a hard disk. You go through them and you divide them by key, by what kind of samples they are, and you try to select those samples right down to the essential ones that you really want your sound, the core sound, to be characterized by. So what does that mean? That means that if you have a sample library within Loopcloud and Splice with 100 hit hats, you're never going to use those 100 hit hats. You only need one. And you don't know in those 100 hit hats which ones have been actually pre-worked on. So you have samples that are very, very good samples, and you have samples that are not very, very good. So you can put them in your DAV, and with a fab filter, you can easily see when they've been worked on or when they haven't. And that way you find yourself with a limited number of samples for each kind of element that you know that is going to be essential for your workflow. And doing that, you sort of narrow it down to what your core sound is. I'm prolonging myself on this aspect because I've wasted years trying to experiment, getting lost, making things that were completely out of my box, out of my comfort area. And as always in life, you get lost to then find yourself at probably the same place where you started, no? So for example, I'm going back to my core sound in this period of my life, and I'm experimenting how to bring those essential elements that you've heard throughout my over 200 tracks. So a heavy raw bass line, a shiny hit hat, etc., etc. And all of these obviously in a year after year in a more current style. So let me play. This is something. This is something I've been working on yesterday. I'm not going to spoiler it all, but I just wanted to show you. So I have a loop where is this too loud or is it okay? Okay. So going to take this final distortion out. So basically, probably an academic would tell you that a good way of starting a track is starting from a kick. You can obviously, with Loopcloud, you have the opportunity of searching for whatever kind of element you want. You have the possibility to put a certain key within the research. That means that this will filter your entire research. You have the possibility of matching the tempo, which will reduce the let's say the possibility of this of Loopcloud of stretching the samples that it will offer you. You have a number of tools here that you can use that can narrow down your research to whatever you're looking for. Also, Loopcloud gives you the opportunity, as most of you may know, of selecting multiple elements and having them play during your session on your DAW. So while I'm, for example, I'm going to deselect the drums, and let's say I'm looking for drum elements, no, in general. Obviously, with it's not selecting it, of course. Obviously, let's go on Splice. Anyway, obviously, you have the possibility to upload and listen live all the elements that you need, and do it at the same time. What does that mean? It means that, in my case, for example, I start adding these, no, and I start putting even a whole groove within Loopcloud before I buy. That's a constructive way of saving time and not filling your sample library, as I was saying before, your personal one stored on your computer, on your hard disk, or wherever it is, to not fill it with things that you don't really need. So you have the possibility of building a groove here, which will allow you to continuously change the elements within your groove and applying it to an idea you already have. No? We following? Is it too simple, or is it too scary faces out there? So what I'm saying is in my workflow, I'm always trying to be as efficient as possible to really find those samples that you really need, if I'm not taking them directly from a sample library that I've already organized. So this is a way where you can continuously exchange samples and just buy them when you actually feel comfortable with what you've found. And once you say, okay, this is what I want, then you can either, if you're able to edit these samples here on Loopcloud that is not responding, so I'm gonna close this and reopen it, ideal.
What I like the thing.
And yeah, you can either, there are many things that you can do on Loopcloud in terms of editing files.
Good.
And it's working. And you can either do it here or do it on your DAW. The essential thing is that you actually have saved time in not having to go to clean all the samples that are going to be accumulated in the folder that you've destined to Splice or Loopcloud, and it's going to be more efficient in terms of you finding what you're looking for. Because again, you can spend hours, you can go through all the technicalities, you can be a freak at knowing all the techniques, but if you're using samples, it all comes down to which samples you select to start with. And the more centered those samples will be, the more efficient you will be in finding your core sound, and more efficient you will be in creating a template where you actually are able to put in 2-3 kicks, 2-3 hit hats, 2-3 bass lines, turning them into MIDI. You can drag them into scene player or sampler, have them there, change them around when you need to, and this will allow you to be able to switch on and off and just have everything you need already there. It's already there. It's just a matter of narrowing it down and being efficient and being organized. So this was the essential part of what I wanted to share with you today, because as I said, it's time consuming and it's frustrating when you're selecting something that is not ideal, and then you have to change it and you port it and you have to change it again, etc., etc. The other thing is the mindset with going to the studio and using samples is also a factor that has made me think a lot this morning when I was trying to think about something original to pass on, something that wouldn't be just dragging samples into a DAW, which probably, who knows how to do that? Who is efficient? No. Okay. Okay, well, let's, I was expecting you guys to be more experts than I am. Okay, so basically, let's just work on this loop. So now that Splice is working, something very, very important is, again, the information that you're giving Loopcloud or Splice in looking for what you're looking for. If you're giving the Loopcloud, for example, the wrong information, you will be finding the wrong things. No? So it all comes down to being very, very clear, very, very specific to what you're looking for. And so, for example, let's say I look for this is a clap, a 909 clap, no? So, again, if I use this clap and go on and enter at the beginning I said there are two ways to do this, no? One is I can just start dragging in samples randomly and just get into a zone, into a flow that will satisfy my need in that moment of making music, no? Okay, correct, great. If you're doing it with the sample library that you've created, you most probably will find yourself introducing new elements to something, to a foundation that is very, very specific. So that means that you will find yourself with something valuable for where you want to go to, no? But on the other side, if you get carried away in the moment, in the flow, and you start dragging in randomly without a proper criteria of how you are searching for the sounds that you're looking for, you most probably will find yourself with something that is maybe creatively valuable, but that you will have to change completely. So obviously, the first option is the preferable one. I personally use Loopcloud more for grooves, if this helps, and I find Splice to be a little bit more current in terms of synths, chords, little pieces that you can drag in here and there. It's a little bit more limited in terms of how you can actually work the samples that you find, but at the same time, it's always good to have both, for me at least, so that you can change. Some days you go with one, and some days you go with another. So yeah, as I was saying yesterday, I won't start the drag and drop. Yesterday I was playing about with this. So let's stop this. Let's reactivate the drums. So a couple of these I've not worked with yet. So this is my foundation. Now, as I said, raw bass line. I've used a tom that is dialoguing with the with the bass line here, because this is pretty important for me, for my sound, for what I'm looking for. So this is what I would define this with this this is what I would define as the core of my sound, no? And it's the foundation to pretty much, I don't want to say a percentage, but pretty much a large amount of tech house and house, no? So what I'm saying here is that if you are able to get these two to dialogue in a constructive way, then you most probably will have a very one second there. So I'm just gonna do something quickly here. So I put a side chain here. This is a new little piece of, okay. How does that sound? Is it good? See? Okay, so what I've done here is, so basically the whole thing is that it would take me 3 weeks to explain what I'm doing here. And I only have 10 minutes left. Ideal is to have a very strong kick. As you can see here, I've used a sample for the kick. I use kicks where I can play about with the notes, and actually this is wrong. And but you can quite easily, for example, something that I do quite often is integrate this MIDI that I have that is always pretty much the same, and I integrate it either in parallel with a different kick that I oversaturate, and then I put it in with a small volume underneath just to maybe change the kick a little bit. But yeah, the essential part of the track, if you have the kick and the bass line working correctly, and you have selected the correct sounds throughout building your sample library, then you have a very large percentage of success. That's what I wanted to say to you today, because we can speak techniques, we don't have the time to do it, but if you already have what you need, which is the ability to put the time in. So you put the time in, you learn, you train your brain to be able to select what you want. And on the side, you study music, you study the people that you admire, the sounds that you want to pursue, what are the characteristics of that sound. For example, I've started working with this little tool here that I took a photograph of because I have it on the computer at home. Where is it? No, I love this round. And see if I find it. No. Anyway, I found a OST that basically manages that manages references. So something that I've started to do to try and find my core sound in 2024 is to start looking for references within my musical idea, no? So I'm starting to look at references for the groove. I'm starting to look at references for the bass lines. I'm starting, because obviously time goes on and the evolution of electronic music is unstoppable. And we find ourselves, even if you have done many tracks like I have, you always have to start looking what's next, what's happening, what other people are doing. So I'm constantly working with references to understand how these younger guys, for example, are doing these grooves, no? And I apply my knowledge to what they are doing. And so to have also references that you can work with for every specific part of your track is also an incredibly useful tool to be able to continuously comparison what you are doing with the reference you've chosen, rather than getting continuously lost in a flow of creativity where you say, this is great, and then you open the DAW 3 days later and you say, yeah, either it's terrible, or it's not in line with what you were looking for, or it's not in line with what your business line of ideas should be, etc., etc. So references are super important in that way. Questions?
So, I don't catch you explaining.
As silent as one can be.
Well, we're very shy. Let's ask some questions. Okay, we're back in.
Yeah, warnings. You can't reach out to the but then, like,
So you said we should build a core of the instruments, samples. Can you give us a estimation, not an exact number, but like an order of magnitude? What are we talking about? 10?
How many hi-hats do you need in a track?
In one track? Maybe 3?
What am I saying? I mean, how many hi-hats do you have in your sample library and in a folder on your desktop? I mean, if I show you how many I have,
Hundreds.
you're going to say you're an idiot, Sander, because you've been telling us that you only need 1 or 3, or one this side, one that side, one you can hear, one you can't, one that is just accompanying, one in the middle, the main one, and then you have 3,000 on your desktop. Why? Because I'm always in the process of cleaning up my computer, of being more efficient in the workflow, and this is why I'm sharing this with you, because I think that it's far more important to be organized and to have a clear vision of how to work and how to get from point A to point B in the fastest way possible. And to do that, you only need a certain number of samples, no? If you're using samples, which is what we're talking about. But also, you can grab those signature samples, drag them into a scene player or a sampler, and make them work in MIDI with them as well, which means that you can adjust the key, you can change them, you can adjust them, you can be creative, and you can create templates, so, for example, I'm an artist that is somewhere in between now house and what has become tech house and what has become house in 2024. So obviously, it's not just one template I have. There's a certain number of templates that I have in order to satisfy whatever could be around the corner for me. If Pete calls me tomorrow and says, "Oh, Sander, we need a remix for this track," and I'll listen to it and I'll say, "Okay, so this is my 808 template. It's not the 909. I might be able to do this in this other way with these sounds." So I open this specific, or the more mainstream, or the more classic house template. So in every template, I will have 2-3 signature samples, sounds, MIDI already ready that I just need to, and that way you can sort of be very, very efficient with very, very little. This is what I'm saying. Instead of filling your computer and filling with information and all these, a lot of the technicality. Yes, I'm an academic. Not in the sense that I teach. I don't teach, I learn. I'm always studying, I'm always asking everyone information, I'm always following courses online, I'm always looking at tutorials, because this is an infinite subject. It's subject to also, it's very subjectivo. No? It's you can see it one way, I can see it another way. But the more organized and the more focused you are on what you want to be, on what you want to express in your sound, the more efficient you will be. And the less time you're going to consume, the less frustrated you're going to be. You're going to enter a positive loop where you have your tools, they're right there, you just need to change them a little bit around, and you already have a strong foundation. Then you can work on the musical part and make the track richer and replay a bass line. I've got this bass line. I like the bass line, but I can't present a track to that gentleman over there that I've just dragged into now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with it, and I'm going to add a tom, and then I'm going to play around with the tom, and then I'm going to replay the bass line with zero, most probably, and then it's going to change, and then it's going to evolve. But I'm starting from a very, very precise starting point that will allow me to completely erase all the initial part of, this is what they're telling me, which is great, all the initial part of putting the foundation together. If I have to send a track to Bibliography, I already know what kind of foundation I need. I already have a template that is made of those sounds that I've put in that template. I just have to select them. They come from a very specific folder where I've decided where I've selected those sounds, etc., 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 going back to right where I started today. And this, for me, is the essential and key part of producing, because if you start from the end, that's when you get lost and you end up doing something different, and that's when he will say, yeah, Simon, this is a really good idea, but it's, how am I going to sign this, no? Any other question?
Thank you.
Really cool. I think we've got time just for one more quick one.
Hi, thank you for the presentation and being open about your emotions. I really appreciate it. I wanted to ask about the samples and creativity. You mentioned that some samples can be recognizable.
The boss. Easy questions, please. The boss is in the house.
So I just wanted to ask, what are some creativity tips to process the samples so they are not that much recognizable, especially the things like vocals or some synth loops, if you use them?
Well, the most efficient, probably the most efficient way of using vocal samples is to use them as in an initial phase of an idea and then have them resung. Because, I mean, we're 8 billion people. We're all accessing the same websites. We're all using the same vocals. Where are you? Ah, sorry. And so, yes, there are, a lot of people are pitching these days, but it's, I mean, the competition is so great. There are how many tracks released every day? How many labels? How many artists per label? How are you going to stand out if you want to stand out? So again, going to right at the beginning of this conversation, it just depends why you're making music. If you want to make music with a sample you love just for you, okay? But then when it gets a bit business orientated and you have to orient that track and make it worthy also for the people to work on that track because they believe on that track, etc., it has to be unique, it has to stand out. So in a way, there are plenty of tracks that even I've made. Some of my biggest tracks had samples that came from Splice. You never know, but you never. In this project, as I said, this sample is a vocal sample. I'm not going to spoiler it. I think it's amazing, but again, my conflict is. What's Mark going to say if I present him a sample that is, he might have already heard the sample. He already might have, last year I did a track that had a super famous vocal in it. And I sent it to a label. They replied saying, we're sorry, we're not interested. And then after 2 weeks, a track with that same sample was released. After 3 months, that sample became one of the biggest samples of the year, and so many other artists used that sample. I decided to use it myself because I was in love with what I did. I did 2 versions of that. But again, if you have your own label and you're doing it for you, as a medicine for you, it's one thing. But if I have to send to some of the biggest labels in the world, then it's a completely different thing. So the vocal has to be unique, and you have to be very, very careful how you use it, and it's very difficult to say how to tricks, and you just have to play about with it, I suppose. It's you put a vocal into a scene player and you play your keyboard, you don't know, look at what MK is doing in the day, no? So
Thank you.
Awesome stuff. What an honest and passionate production lad from Sandro. Can we please have a big round of applause for Flashmob? Thank you so much, Rick. Really, really insightful. Really, really insightful. So